Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Boring. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Maislin. We've got some Bengals to get into. We've got some Reds to get into and some Ask Skinny Anything and whatever else fancies our way. Rick, I know we're going to talk some Reds, but my God, they're just boring.
It is. And the part that makes it so boring, Skinny, is it feels like it is a carbon copy of last year.
Yes.
And so much so that, it's even a little worse than last year. I went back and I was like, this feels like we're in the exact same spot. So where were we at last year with this team when we had this podcast? It was a day later at this time last year. It was on June 6th when we recorded. I went back and looked. The Reds today are 30-33. Last year when we had this podcast, they were 29-33. And do you know what the conversation was that we were having at this time last year?
How boring they were.
Well, they had just won 4 out of their last 5, and we were questioning, had they saved their season just in time?
Yeah, the answer was no, apparently.
The answer was no, apparently, but that's part of why this is so boring this year, I think, because we already saw this play out. Like, even if they win a handful of games over the next couple of weeks, we already know how this ends.
I had to coach a summer league game a couple nights ago, and I got in the car and listened to the 9th inning when the 3 batters that came up were one was worse than the next, and it ended with Garrett Hampson, who shouldn't even be on a major league roster, striking out. And then yesterday I'm driving to go to basketball, and I hear the lineup for the afternoon game. And the bottom 4 in the order were Connor Joe, Benson. No, I think Connor Joe, Trevino, Benson, and Matt McClain. And I'm like, you can't win with that. I mean, Connor Joe got 6th in a big league lineup.
Shout out to Connor Joe. He's going to make his Ask Skinny Anything debut today, later on in the show.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we got a question about Connor Joe for you.
Okay.
Yeah. I mentioned the Reds are 30-33, 4th in NL Central, 9.5 games back to the Cubs. They just lost back-to-back series to the Cubs and Brewers. And then, Skinny, it feels like the season kind of hit its low point with the Hunter Green injury news. You already had the Austin Hayes injury going on. They signed Wade Miley to take Hunter Green's spot in the rotation, which in some ways, to me, I don't know if you felt this way, it almost just felt like you're waving the white flag on the season a little bit. Yeah, if that's the guy you're going to, it's kind of just like, well, he can get us through.
Well, luckily yesterday, I wasn't able to place a wager on this because I was so busy. But when I saw the total of 9 and I heard that lineup, I'm like, oh, man, that screams under. And all day it was an under until good old Wade Miley came in and gave up 4 in the 9th to take it to a 9-1 final. It went over by a run. So thank you, Wade.
Yeah, I'm happy for him. I heard his interview. Jim Kelch, actually, my broadcast partner, did a great interview with him that they've been replaying. I heard it on Lance McAllister's show. All that stuff sounds cool. It's great that Wade Miley's trying to get back and he wants his kid to see him play and all that stuff. But anyone who kind of knew this story knew it's probably just not going to work out. And then you see him actually pitch yesterday, and it looked like a guy it just probably doesn't have it anymore.
So I would say this, for the rest of this season, when CES gets back healthy, whenever that may be, he's still rehabbing, I just say throw those kids out there every day, let them sink or swim, and come the end of this season, figure out where you're at, and if you have to reboot this again for the billionth time, and reboot it correctly, and probably reboot it with somebody else doing the rebooting.
Okay, well, it's interesting you brought that up, because an Ask Any Anything question we got that I figured we could just talk about during this segment, since there's not a lot of interesting topics around the Reds, was, do you think that the Reds should be trying hard to trade Elly De La Cruz for whatever crop of prospects they can get right now, as opposed to waiting until the last minute, getting almost nothing in 2028 or 2029? And they also added in, what if he never develops into the superstar and his stock kind of starts to drop over the next couple of seasons?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think his stock's going to drop. I don't think he goes backward. I don't think he regresses. I do question, will he blossom into the superstar, he's been labeled to eventually be.
But that's some of his stock right now, right? Is there still, we still believe he is going to be like the best shortstop in baseball potentially.
Yeah, I'm still of the ilk that he is one of the cornerstone pieces you continue to build around. I do. I get the question, because you're never going to be able to sign him long term when it comes to the free agency period of time. I would kick this can a couple of years down the road. I wouldn't do it yet. It's an interesting question. I'm not going to scoff at the question, because I think it is an interesting question, because it is I mean, we've seen some teams, Washington got out from underneath Juan Soto and got a pretty good bag in return. You've seen this before where you're like, gosh, they're trading that guy when they can control him and he's still young and budding and all that stuff. I get it, but I just don't know what else you got to hang on to at the moment.
Well, I think that's absolutely correct. But to the point that you just brought up, at some point, does this just start looking like you need to blow this up and rebuild it all again? And if that's the case, then who can get you more in that regard than Ellie De La Cruz right now?
Yeah, I don't know how you sell that to the fan base. Fan base is already fed up with you, and you get rid of whatever interesting pieces you have, even if it may be the right baseball move in theory. I don't think fans want to wait 3 years for returns on that. I don't see it. I get it. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm keeping him as long as I can keep him. And I still think if he does butt into that star that you expect him to come, then, you do get a huge haul at the last minute trade possibilities for him in a few years.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's an absolute non-starter for that reason. The Reds just aren't going to part with a guy who puts butts in the seats, makes them marketable without them even winning games. Like, Ellie's all they have from a PR standpoint right now. I don't think they would do anything that would get rid of him a day earlier than they have to. And I would, like, Hunter Green's not in that same mold, but those are, in my opinion, the two guys that they have right now. Those are the only two guys that feel like they are definites, going to be around, and they're going to try to build around those two.
So where does the finger of blame go, and how do you fix this? I mean, the 2023 excitement was palpable, man. It was real. And it felt like, man, they're just scratching the surface, and where can they go with this? Just add a piece here and a piece there. Well, they obviously haven't added a piece here or a piece there. They've stuck their foot in the ground and their head in the sand and not done anything in that regard. But who do we blame? And how do you it's easy to say who do you blame, but how do you fix it?
Well, a lot of it is just the nature of the sport, right? And that's why Major League Baseball is so frustrating, because you do just have salary cap issues and inequalities within the sport that make it hard for a team like the Reds to compete. I think it feels like, to me, the Reds are kind of stuck in the cycle of trying to be consistently good. And at best, that nets you like third or fourth in the NL Central. And in reality, it feels like for teams in their market, kind of the old Marlins strategy of, you play for a good cycle every 4 or 5 years where you make your run, then you blow it all up.
But this was supposed to be the good cycle with what you got. So
but they never really fully went all in, right, Skinny? It felt like they tried to do it sustainable. They were trying to do it the right way and build long term. And it's like, you can't do that as the Reds. You just have to mortgage off your future, go all in for a season or two, and hope it works out. Like for the Marlins, it did twice, right? Like they made their runs and they had some chances. They did some things with those years when they went all in, and then they went back to being the worst team in Major League Baseball right after that. So, like, I think, unfortunately, you're kind of stuck in a spot with the realities of the sport that you kind of have to do something like that. The being stuck in between and trying to be good all the time equates to you just never being interesting at all.
Yeah, and I guess the other part is it doesn't feel like there's a great wave of hitting prospects in the organization either, right? Like, hey, wait until this guy comes up. Sal Stewart and Cam Collier don't do anything for me at the moment. I'm sorry. Maybe I don't believe in the way they develop players, because it feels like they haven't developed them either.
And we can talk about Burns and Petty and Lauder and some of these names that they have come up in the pitching prospects, but Skinny, we just had a situation where Hunter Green went down and the best they could get was Wade Miley for the moment. So the fact that they're so thin at starting pitching right now too, which coming into the season is the one thing I was really hopeful about for this organization. Yeah, it just doesn't feel like there's a lot to be hopeful right now, at least for this season, next season, the immediate direction of this team.
And I wonder this, I mean, did Terry Francona come out of retirement being sold a bill of goods that they were going to go maybe all in at some point? Or was this just, you know what, it's a comfort zone job. I like managing. I'm just going to come back to do that. And I think we all got our hopes up that, this was going to be the turnaround. This was going to be the one. And I'm not blaming. I mean, listen, when you're writing down Connor Joe is 6th in your batting order on a day, you ain't got much to choose from, man.
Correct. And last time, to be clear, this is not me taking shots at Terry Francona, because last time people got all mad at me the last time I said something like this, saying I was like taking out on Terry Francona and being unrealistic about what he could do with this team. That's been my whole point since the Reds hired him. he can't do much about this situation if they're not going to give him players, which they're not going to. So all the Reds fans that got so excited about the Reds got Tito and acted like something was going to change, he's an old man who looks at a lineup card and hands it to the umpire, and then after the game tells these millionaires, like, good try. There's not a lot he can actually do. I don't know what people thought, like him yelling at them to run harder to first base was going to change how this team operated or something, or him yelling at them after they got thrown out, making stupid base running blunders was going to change them. That's not how this works at this level. You need talent, you need players, and the Reds simply don't have that. So the whole Terry Francona thing, he was an old man who'd been going through a lot of health issues, in and out of doctor's appointment. He wanted to get back to work. That's why he said yes to the Reds. It wasn't because they had some great situation. It's because that's what old people do when they start feeling irrelevant.
No, that's a fair point.
All right, I have another little topic for you here.
Yes.
Lance McAllister on his show, I caught a show last night on Wednesday night. He put together his Reds all-quarter century team on the air following the Athletics National Project, where they were doing that for all of Major League Baseball. So here's who he picked at each position. And I thought it was an interesting listen on his part. Kudos to Lance for doing it. And I want to get your take on if you would change any of these guys out. So at catcher, he went with Tucker Barnhart. That was an easy one for him. Joey Votto as the first baseman was an obvious one. And Brandon Phillips at second base was an obvious one. Those were kind of like the first three guys I think he had. Then at shortstop, he went Zach Cozart. At third base, he started with Eugenio Suarez, but then landed on Todd Frasier eventually. He went Adam Dunn, left field, Ken Griffey Jr., center field, Jay Bruce in right field. And then starting pitching, he went Johnny Cueto, Luis Castillo, Bronson Arroyo, Aaron Harang, Homer Bailey. And then as his closer, he went Aroldis Chapman, and his manager, Dusty Baker.
That's probably fair. I'd have to look at the years that Frasier played compared to the years Suarez played. I just, in my mind's eye at the moment, without having numbers in front of me, I think I'd pick Suarez over Frasier, to be honest with you.
Well, that's where Lance was at, but then he saw, I think, Frasier had more all-star appearances. He was an important part of two playoff teams where Suarez never played for one. So I think he ended up giving him the weight on some things like that.
I just can't believe Billy Hamilton didn't land on that list. And where is Royce Clayton on that? Or maybe Royce Clayton was pre-2000. I don't know. He could have.
No, I feel like Royce Clayton was definitely in my high school years. That was
was
definitely post-2000, I would say.
Yeah, that's probably – no, that's probably right. I'm just trying to think of who I could debate. I guess I could debate a little bit because Zach Cozart had some good years and certainly has had a longer period of time. And as goofy as we just talked about Ellie, I'm not even so sure Ellie wouldn't be in that mix.
Well, and that's the funny thing. Lance kind of dismissed him just because he's like, he only has an X number of at-bats so far in his major league career. He can't be on your all-quarter century team. But when you get done with the list, a couple things jump out to me. One is, this tells you a lot about Reds baseball over the last 25 years, right. and why when you're talking about your best shortstop to choose from is Zach Cozart and like Felipe Lopez. That's the big argument we're having at shortstop over the last 25 years. Kind of tells you where your franchise has been. So I think that definitely jumped out to me. And then the other part was just the lack of competition at some of these spots. I mean, there's not a lot of depth at them, especially what the shortstop one kind of blew my mind. Third base, I didn't think was like the Suarez and Frasier, I guess, are pretty good players. I mean,
what about the salad days of Scooter Gennett?
He was mentioned. He was mentioned as a possible.
I think Brandon Phillips is a no-brainer there.
Yeah, Brandon Phillips is an obvious one. It's him and Votto are the only two that you feel good about, really, when you look at this list.
Yeah, but I will say this: I think Zach Cozart, didn't he make an All-Star team?
Yes.
Frasier made an all-star team. Tucker Barnhart was a Gold Glove.
Multi-time Gold Glover.
Yep. I mean, Adam Dunn with the power. I mean, you can argue all the strikeouts and the waves that he went, the hot and the colds, but at the end of the day, every season seemed to be a 40 home run season. Yeah, it's hard to argue with any of those. It really is.
So the better question, which people really like during our Bengals Ring of Honor conversation, is what's the inverse of this? What's the route you were just about to take a few minutes ago when you started?
I may have to map that out. That's a good one.
Jason Vossler at first base.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Nick Martini in right.
Who was our guy? Who was our big acquisition from the Cubs that just was an absolute disaster that they paid all the money for? The big boy, the hitter.
I'm drawing. Oh, Jamer Candelario?
No. Before that.
Oh, Mike
Moustakas, yeah.
Yeah, he was a disaster.
Yeah.
Billy Hamilton's probably on that list.
Billy Hamilton's probably in there.
I may have to put that together for next week.
Yeah, we really should. There's some serious names that have come and gone for this Reds organization. Now the problem is remembering some of the guys that have only had like a cup of coffee.
I need to have about a good hour to look through Baseball Reference and come up with some dandy names off that list.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that for maybe next week's show, because I'm sure there'll be no more interesting topics to talk about with the Reds next week.
But can I say this? I know other teams are dealing. Why are baseball players today seemingly so injured?
It's a legit question. It just feels like guys, maybe they're more cautious than they've ever been with certain injuries. I don't know. Maybe you're investing so much money into these guys, they're just safer about them. But you're right. It seems like constantly guys are just in and out.
I'm going back to guys are just too jacked up.
You need fatleats. Leave them fat.
There's no question.
Too much muscle, too much to tear.
I mean, look, Hunter Green is a jacked up dude. I mean, he is. Are we going to deal with this all the time now with him? We've got
multiple groin injuries
and obliques,
and now he's like talking about the back's bothering him too because of it. That's not good.
Jamer had a bad back that needed a couple of epidurals, CES had a bad back. I mean, I don't know, man. It feels just weird.
I'm with them. I'm dealing with an SI joint issue, hip back thing. I'm going to the chiropractor after this show. It's rough out here.
You're also an older man now, buddy.
You're telling me.